What is up, everybody? Welcome to another incredible episode of the Headed Home podcast. We're your hosts, Andrew and Jen Gallegos, and this is one of our first episodes here in 2023. Our goal this year is to put out 26 episodes, so I think it's going to be a good, fun, exciting year. And in each episode, like always, we're committed to bringing you, our audience, valuable content and insights in each one of these episodes, and today's going to be no different.
Yep. Today is going to be great because we have Mike Olson with us. He is a very successful real estate agent in Colorado and is also the co-founder of Go Colorado Homes Real Estate here in Colorado. So, hi, Mike. How's it going?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks for coming on. And I got to just mention off the jump, we have a lot in common, man. We're based out of Lakewood. All three of us went to the same high school. Yeah. We're both in the business of helping people buy homes. You obviously help them sell as well. We're both slightly above average rec basketball players, I would say.
you more than me these days, man.
I don't know. I probably practice a lot more than you, and I don't know if that's true anyway. But we both coach basketball. We both have a couple kids. They go to the same school as well. So we're basically brothers from another mother. And I learned something about you recently, that you are a killer ping pong player as well. You will be needing to give me a rematch because you smoked me when we played at that Christmas party. So it's on, buddy.
So much fun.
Okay, Mike. So
that return serve was insane.
We have a ping pong table in our backyard, so feel free to come over.
I didn't tell him that.
Oh,
okay. I acted like it was just nonchalant for me.
The reason I'm telling you is because I need someone to compete with him. That's not me, because he is truly the most. Well, you played basketball with him. He's just so annoying sometimes to be around when you're competing. So last night, I'm giving you a story. Last night we play. The last few Sundays we've been playing hide and seek in our house with the lights off, which is like super fun for the kids. So Andrew, we won. Me and Ava won last night, and literally wouldn't talk to me for an hour after I won, and kept trying to like backtrack and find this reason for me to admit that we actually didn't win, because he couldn't stand to lose to me.
I love
it.
I disagree with that, but I'm not going to go into the whole story. Mike, you're a competitive dude as well, right?
I am.
Okay. He is. So
anyway,
you know how it goes.
I understand.
So all that to say, Mike, I would love for you to come over and play ping pong with Andrew, so I don't have to compete with him, because the level of
I'll win against you anyway.
He will do whatever
he
will do whatever it takes to like play hide and seek again, so that he beats me, so that he,
I'm gonna start scoping out.
To do a rematch tonight, so that Andrew can like continue on with the week with a positive mindset.
Yeah, I'm gonna like book out a couple hours during the day today just to like scope out spots in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
So
what you really got to do is you got to like build a false wall without Jen noticing.
Dang, dude, that's next level competitive.
That is something you would do for sure.
See, that's smart though. I'm gonna do that. I like that.
So Jen, when you go on your girls trip next, just know what Andrew's doing.
Yeah. All right.
I'll come over. I can hang some drywall with you.
Yeah. Trap door.
No.
Yeah, let's do it. I love it. Well, hey man, on a professional note though, I know you've been in real estate for a while. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what market you're in, maybe how many families you typically help per year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into real estate back in 2010, kind of bottom of the market, which in hindsight was actually really great, because I got my feet wet, kind of figured out what I was doing while everybody was slow, and then have been able to kind of ride the crazy wave that we've been on since then. So started a little boutique brokerage out in Golden that was great. And then in 2014 started a brokerage with my partner, Will, who I believe. Ran that for 6 years. And then in 2020, we brought that over, and now we operate kind of as a team under the Keller Williams umbrella out of the Lakewood office. So that's been good. And obviously, there's ebbs and flows in real estate. Any given year, I'll probably help between 25 and 40 families with their their home needs. And it's kind of expanded into, investors and developers, but I still work with a lot of first-time home buyers and kind of everything in between. So it's been a fun journey. I just feel blessed to do something every day that I enjoy, and I've seen the impact that it's made on my clients' lives over time, which is pretty cool.
So
That's awesome,
I have a question, and we both went to CU. So before I ask my question, how excited are you for next year's CU football? Do you have any
I mean, it's
comments
just going to
about
be
that?
so nice to like have a program of relevancy again, right? I mean, when I went there, like we would win some games, we'd lose most games. It was still fun to go to but CU has a very storied tradition with their football program, and so I'm stoked. That whole, when we talk about value propositions in real estate, right? You look at Coach Prime's value proposition, and that's like the best example I've ever seen. He shows up and people are transferring, people are committing, because of the value that he brings to the program. So I'm super stoked. I hope to be able to take the kids up for a couple of games this year.
Yeah, it's going to be,
Yeah,
I feel like the last time they were, because I graduated from there in 2005. I feel like that, I mean.
Yeah, they were decent.
Yeah.
03, I want to say. 04.
Yeah,
back in the days with like Jeremy Bloom and
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
Yeah,
we might just turn you into a CU
was that
fan.
Joel Klatt back then? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Joel Klatt. Yep.
Klatt. Yeah. Well, I'm a Notre Dame fan. So like when I was 6 or 7, I think 88, 89, 90, those years, there was a huge rivalry with CU. And it was Notre Dame just because my family, my grandfather was a huge Irish fan. So I kind of grew up in that. So those years, when CU won the national championship, they beat Notre Dame, and it was like a devastating loss for a 7-year-old. It was like that clip. It was a punt return that Rocket Ishmael took to the house, but it was called back on a clip, and we were just devastated. So we hated CU, but now I follow it, daily. I watch like the the social media that his son puts out, and it is really cool to just see, and it's exciting too. I want to get up there.
Yeah.
Well, so Mike, I'm interested in because I think you majored in business, but what was like interesting to you, like when you were thinking about getting into real estate? Like what were some of the like things that you were weighing that like really got you into a place where you felt like you wanted to make that a career?
Right. Yeah. So I got a degree in finance, obviously a business degree, and I knew that I didn't want to go like work at a hedge fund and work 80 hours a week and not see my friends or family, because I had friends that did that. And so, I came out of college, I got a job, kind of a random job working for some lobbyists that are based out of Denver, which was very eye-opening for a recent college graduate to see like how the world actually works. But I kind of woke up one day and had just kind of realization that I'd be doing the same thing in 5 years if I didn't make a change. And I'd always been interested in real estate. I had purchased my first home, and to be honest, it was a pretty terrible experience. Like I never knew what was going on. I had, so it was kind of a disaster. And I thought to myself, like, I could definitely do a better job of that. And so it kind of just made sense to give it a go. Steph and I were newlyweds, so it's a great value to bring to your new marriage. Is like, hey, like I don't make that much money anyway, but now I'm gonna not make any for a while. So made for an interesting first year, but turned out well in the end. So that was good. And it's always just been intriguing to me because a lot of the people that I knew growing up, that you don't really think about it when you're a teenager, like realize people's net worth or that kind of thing. But there was kind of a common thread that I saw in the parents that I knew of friends that were doing really well, and real estate was a pretty common trend in there. And so I just thought, what a great way to be able to, help myself and my eventual family, as well as, my clients kind of develop that, that generational wealth that I've seen come into play for people.
Yeah, no, you brought up that net worth. I saw a study that I think KCM blog did last year in 2022, and they did a comparison between the net worth of a homeowner compared to the net worth of a renter. And the net worth of a homeowner was like 40 times more than net worth of a renter. And obviously equity it plays a huge role, in just appreciation plays a huge role in that. But that's true, man. Net worth is a legitimate stat that we should be looking at and talking to our people about. I was reading online. I didn't know this about you, but it looks like after college, you traveled for a few months. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so graduated college, worked for a little while, and then my sister and her husband were living down in Arequipa, Peru. His parents started an orphanage down there like 30 years ago.
Cool.
And so me and a buddy said, hey, can we come live with you? And so we went down there for 6 months and helped out at the orphanage and kind of traveled all around South America, which was great. I mean, obviously, my Spanish is nowhere where it used, not even close to where it used to be, but just a great experience to kind of see how others live in this world, and just to kind of get to experience those other cultures. So that was great, and just kind of, I always like to travel, but that, just kind of put that as something that I want to do with my kids and show them other cultures and the value of of all the other possibilities in this world that we just don't see on a daily basis. So it was a life-changing experience on that front.
Yeah, I think we took our kids to Europe last summer, and I feel like they had like a newfound appreciation for like different things that they don't even like consider,
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that anytime that you can like open your eyes or open their eyes to more perspectives and world, it's really important. I have a question for you, and I think you went a few months ago, but you went to Iceland recently, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep,
Tell me about that.
That was it was very cool. It was my wife and I.
Literally.
Yes, literally. 12-year anniversary. So Iceland in December is not what people really think of as like a great idea. But it actually ended up being very, very cool. It actually wasn't as cold as I thought it would be. Obviously, we were bundled up, but unless you were like on the beach, that's where it was the coldest. But we got to do like an ice cave tour under the largest glacier on Iceland, which covers like 8% of the whole island.
Wow.
So that was really just, I'd never been to Iceland. I've had friends that loved it. Now I just want to go back in the summer to kind of to see it when it's green and everything's blooming too. So definitely a cool experience and one that I would recommend.
Wow, that's
crazy. Awesome, man. Yeah, we got to check that out.
I feel like you would love
some
that.
Point. Yeah. Well, and just it gives you perspective too. I think just anywhere you go, I think that's what I always take from traveling, especially when you get out of the US, it's just perspective and, just the things that we think are a big deal. We take a lot for granted.
We take a lot for granted, and we also we think that our way is the only way or the right way. And then you see people who live completely differently and they have great lives and a lot of
are totally fine. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, back to real estate, I wanted to ask, you kind of talked about how you got in the business, and that was an interesting time there in 2010, right after the Great Recession. That's when I got in as well. So it was dicey, but
right.
In this industry, as a real estate professional, it's competitive, and we're always, you were young when you got in. What sort of stumbling blocks did you have right out of the gate? And did you have success right away? Were there any moments where you're like, man, I don't know if I can do this? Like, tell us about those early stages and how that went.
Yeah. No, there were definitely those moments where, it just, things don't go your way. I think I was 25 or 26 and looked like a baby. And when you're dealing with, generally people's biggest assets, that can be a tough pitch to getting them to put their trust in you. But had, some great mentors, and I knew that I could do things well if people would give me a chance. And truthfully, it was just a lot of hustle. I mean, back in the day, just, 2010, nobody had money to buy a house, right? My first deals were people buying houses for $110,000 or a condo for 65. And I was just chasing those down and doing everything I could to get the deals done. And the cool thing now, looking back, is seeing, those people who made the decision to buy back then, sometimes their properties have like quadrupled in value since they bought it. And, so I think somebody was asking me about this the other day, like, at what point in your career did you kind of hit that point where you weren't constantly worried about like, am I going to have another deal? Where's it going to come from? And I think for me, it was probably around year 5. I kind of woke up and I was like, I'm not sure where it's going to come from, but I know that I've planted enough seeds that, somebody's going to call who's going to have a need that I can help them with. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about kind of when you hit that point in your career too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still every day, it's like I always have that motivation to continue to plant
it's always
seeds.
there, right?
It's always there.
underlined.
But no, you're right. I think it was probably 5 or 6 years
Yeah.
where it was like, okay, like I can, and I had success early like you, because that's all I knew was just to grind and talk to as many people as I possibly could. And I think probably like you, I used to my advantage the fact that I was younger and fresher, because coming out of that great recession, all of the mortgage guidelines had changed.
Yep.
It was the wild, wild west, which, I mean, just part of the reason why the housing market crashed was there were a lot of bad loans given.
Yeah.
When I got in the business, I didn't really know anything. I didn't know much about the business. My uncle he was running a branch and had brought me into it. And so I thought it was something different and cool, and I could make an impact on people's life. But I realized that the reputation that lenders had at that time was a really bad one.
Right.
It was like, we don't trust you. You caused the housing crash. So how I went about it was just, I wanted to educate people. I wanted to be honest, and I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. And I had just a fresh outlook on it. And a lot of the older lenders in our office and older lenders that I knew, they were really just burnt out. Like, how are we supposed to do loans if we have to ask everybody for tax returns?
We have to verify income now? Like, what are we supposed to do with this? Right?
Exactly. So when I learned, right after all of that happened. So I had success early, but you're right, man. Like, it takes a while until you get to the point to where you're like, okay, like I'm going to be able to make a career out of this. Doesn't mean that we stop planting seeds, but
right.
Probably about the same amount of time as it took you.
Yeah. And I think that you and I were kind of advantaged just because we grew up here, right? We had a sphere of people who already, knew us, liked us, and trusted us. But as I coach new agents and teach classes and stuff, it's like, you want that instant gratification where you have a great conversation and they're like, yes, I'm definitely going to use you when I want to buy something, but that might not be for 3 years. Right. And so it just doesn't happen overnight. So you've got to be out there planting those seeds, making sure that people know that you know what you're doing, and showing the success that you've had with other clients and how you can help them with that too. And it's hard because it takes a little while to get that ball rolling, but then once it does, if you continue to do a good job, it kind of just grows.
I think that's so important when just in general with everything in life. And like, we were even talking about this with like sports, but I think when you're wanting something to happen, like you want that instant gratification and you want to see like the outcome of like your hard work, like right away. Right. And you just almost hit that again. You just don't. Like, you're not going to see it for months or years. And I think in particular, like when you're new to something and you're just hanging on by a thread because you're like, I just need to know if this is like going to work out.
Yeah.
It's if you just like keep going and do a little every day, that you have to have that mindset, because you aren't going to see success right away ever.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it was really hard as a new agent because you can only call people so many times and you can only, read so many books and go to so many classes. And then at a certain point, I found myself kind of feeling like I was twiddling my thumbs. But then you just got to get back out there and, kind of find new people to talk to. And, both myself and my partner kind of built our businesses based on just being involved in the community. Just getting to, like, he moved here, didn't know a soul, and he's been doing it for probably close to 20 years now. And he had a 15-year stretch where he grew his business every year just because he was out there getting to know people, genuinely caring about what's going on with them and helping them. And, it proves that, if you're out there and you actually genuinely care about helping people and you do a good job, your business will grow. It just takes time.
So what would be like with the agents that you're coaching, or, the education you're providing to any agent, like what would be like a piece of advice that you would give them as they're like kind of going out in trying to grow their business.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the owner of the first brokerage that I worked out instilled in me that anytime you're going to reach out to somebody, have a piece of like an item of value, right? And that doesn't mean go bring them a coffee mug, but it means, you know, if they're thinking about maybe buying this year, you know, just sharing some statistics with them and just educating them as to what the market's doing so they can make the right decision for them and their family. But I think that a lot of people that get into this business just call people, you know, once a month and they're like, hey, how are you? You ready to buy a house yet? And that just leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. So, you know, oftentimes I'll call people just to check in and we won't even talk about real estate. Right. And truthfully, that's great with me. They know what I do and that I'm here if they have questions, but I want to hear what's going on with their kids and, you know, how the swim meet went and all of those kind of things. And so I think that just being genuine and bringing an item of value to those conversations is really helpful for newer agents.
And I can tell that you're like that. And I think that when you see someone that has that value of really just trying to bring like a relationship to the table and add value to that relationship, whether you're seeing any payout from it, you know, or any benefit to your business. I think if you can really get yourself to the point to where you feel that way and it authentically is like, look, I'm just here to help, like whatever I can do to help, whether I'm a resource and you're working with someone else or whether we work together and I really feel like you're like that, but I think that's probably one of the big reasons that you're successful.
Yeah, I guess that's probably fair to say. And yeah, I mean, I've had funny situations where, I mean, there's, you know, 22,000 realtors in Denver, right? And sometimes you can't get around the relationship. You know, I had a friend who his girlfriend's mom was a realtor. So he was out there looking for houses and he would send them to me and be like, dude, can I just get your thoughts on these? So I'd run numbers with him and look at everything and kind of give him advice from the backside with like no benefit at all, right? I was just doing it because he thought that I was a better resource than the agent he was somewhat forced to use. You know, and then they ended up breaking up and he ended up buying a house with me. But, you know, it's kind of one of those funny things where when you do things, because, you know, as agents and as lenders, like we have knowledge that's above and beyond what most people know. And so if we can help them, you know, just make a decision, then, you know, those are the people that turn around and tell their friends about how much they valued that, you know, that advice.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let me ask you this. What's the biggest challenge you're facing in your business right now, and how are you tackling that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of combating the doom and gloom media coverage that everybody sees of, you know, the housing market is crashing and, you know, I guess I would call it a challenge, but it's kind of fun to educate people as to what's actually going on. Because, you know, you'll read an article on MSN and talk about, you know, their statistics, and a lot of those statistics are driven by list prices instead of actually sold prices. So they're like, oh, people are cutting their, you know, list prices by 20%. It's like, wow, that's because they priced it 20% over where it should be in this market, right? And so you can make numbers say whatever, but just kind of educating people as to what those numbers actually look like. And, you know, we're nowhere close to being, you know, a balanced market still. I did an update last week kind of on the national level, and we would need to build like 7.2 million homes to get the inventory back to like a balanced market, right? So the shortage of inventory isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And that's the same challenge that we're all facing that, right? I had a conversation with a buyer last week and it was almost just like, I think she posed it to me in a way of like, well, you know, the market's going to crash later this year. So I'm planning on, you know, just getting pre-approved now and then holding off and then swooping up, you know, one of these short sale foreclosure type things. And, you know, and it's just, yeah, I completely disagree. And here's why. But I think that education is important for sure. I think that's something that we all have an obligation to do, you know, in our profession, is to make sure that people are educated on what the real numbers look like.
Yeah. And we're in a hard time too, because, you know, we had years of interest rates that were, you know, 3% or lower, which economically speaking is like it's not good to have interest rates that low. Right.
No.
And so I talk to people, they're like, well, we're okay. We're just going to hold off until interest rates go back down to 3%. And I have to tell them, like, there's a good chance that never happens again in our lifetimes. And that's a good thing. Like, when they're lending at 3%, that means that the Fed rate is pretty much at zero, and banks are not charging any money to lend money to each other. Like, economically speaking, from a big picture, 3% interest rates aren't good for the for the economy.
Well, and it's not good for the market either, because if rates are 3%, so many buyers enter the market, and that's where we see the $100,000 over asking price and bridging the appraisal gap. I talk to buyers all the time, and it's like, hey, here's the benefit of higher interest rates. You might be able to get seller concessions.
Right.
And that we didn't see any of that, or the rate buy downs, temporary buy downs, permanent buy downs. That's all been an option over the past couple of months. Although I have seen recently, I don't know if it's just more of we're kind of picking up in that time of year, so there's more buyers in the market, or maybe home prices are just being listed correctly now, or maybe the interest rates have been digested and everyone knows they're a little bit higher now. But I'm starting to see a lot of multiple bids on properties, and not as many of those opportunities for seller concessions, but it's definitely more when rates are higher. Buyers have that leverage there.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, the nice thing is that you can always change your rate, right? So if somebody thinks that they're going to come down, get a property, get a buy down, get some concessions, and then when the rate goes down, refi. And if it goes up, then you're glad that you locked in where you did, right? So the theory that we should just sit on the sidelines until something crazy happens, just, because I've been having that conversation almost my whole career. And then people always like, oh, I really should have bought 2 years ago, because generally the house prices, and we might see a small correction, but real estate is a long-term play, right? So, and there's never been a 10-year period where you wouldn't have gained value in your house in real estate. So, I heard the saying, time in the market is better than timing in the market with real estate. So get into something and start enjoying the appreciation.
Isn't everything like that though? Like, it's like people will try to wait for like the right moment or like the right time to do something. And it's like, if you just like start doing something or just like jump in, then, like at least you're doing something instead of just like waiting around, which I think is the most problematic.
Jen's favorite quote is shoot, then aim.
It is.
Just do it.
Just shoot, then
Just
aim.
start.
Right?
I know.
You would love my third grade basketball team. It's a common trend.
If you need me to come in and provide a lesson around shooting then aiming, I'm happy to do it. See, if you just shoot enough, you'll be fine.
That's true.
Okay, I want to know a little bit about any like productivity or time management hacks that have been helpful for you or have made you successful, kind of like in those day-to-day routines that you have. Like what sort of structures do you have set up that have been helpful, or something that you can say, this really like changed my business throughout the years?
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll preface this with saying that I still have a lot of room for improvement in this area. But I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over the last couple years is just focus on one thing at a time, because I'm notorious for, you're knocking out a project and then you get an email, you get a text, you get a call, because there's always people vying for our attention, right? And then you go off on that tangent and then you never get around to doing it. So I try to make kind of a daily or weekly list of like the things I know I need to get done that are outside the scope of like getting a deal done or making an offer or negotiating something. That takes precedent. But for those projects for the business, and then just focusing and blocking out an hour and just saying, I'm not answering phone calls, I'm not answering emails until I get this done. And that's really helped me, just because I can be such a spaz when I don't have that focus time, and just, kind of wake up 4 hours later and realize that I still haven't gotten it done. And, all of those email responses or phone calls could have waited an hour for sure.
It is crazy when you like think about how easy it is to be pulled in every direction. I always notice with myself, like when I'm getting pulled in directions, it's typically because I'm doing something that's in like the proactive space that like doesn't actually have to be done, that I could
Right.
like put off a lot, you know? And so I'll be like, oh, I have to answer this email, or oh, I have to like, you know, do this thing that's actually not as important. It's actually more important that I do the most proactive thing that isn't needing to be urgently done in that moment.
Right.
But we're so, I feel like we're, you know, in such a space where like we feel like we have to react to every single thing that someone is requesting of us. And you know, it is really important to set time and space away to do those proactive things, because that's actually where you're going to get the greatest benefit in your
Right.
work or in your life.
Yeah.
I put something on my Instagram story this morning. It was this guy that was talking about like, you know, people don't get their workouts done or meditation or anything proactive that you have, but it's because they don't calendar it in, and that they just, you know, sometimes just think that it will happen and it doesn't. And so I think that's and it's hard. I feel like everyone is working on that. I have to work on it daily too, but
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
sure you have that time when you're avoiding, you know, those reactive pieces is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think my favorite term for agents that I heard at one point was chaos cowboys. Because there's always, you know, a fire to put out or something, you know, somebody that's demanding your attention. And so if you don't kind of wrangle in that mindset, then you can literally just spend a whole day jumping from one thing to another and not really accomplish that much.
Yeah. Well, and it is tough, you know, like in an industry where it's competitive and in, you know, quote unquote sales, you want to be flexible and you have to be reactive sometimes, but it, like you mentioned before, you know, trying to find that balance, I think is a struggle for all of us. What's helped me a lot is you know, expectation setting. If I know I'm going to be in um that important but not urgent zone, you know, I might set up like my out of office saying, hey, for the next hour, I'm going to be gone, you know, on my voicemail or email. Do you put any, I guess I'm sure you do, because I know you coach, I see you at like school events and stuff. So I know you're good at having that balance, but do you put a focus on setting expectations with your clients?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a kind of a painful lesson that I had to learn over the years, because when you're new, right, you're hustling and like every lead, every phone call is like the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah.
You know, I used to kind of like brag about like I would wake up to pee in the middle of the night and I would check my phone and like respond to an email, which like in my mind I was like, I'm out there hustling, and now I'm like, no, you're an idiot. Like like that's not good or necessary on any front. And so, yeah, I have those conversations pretty openly with my clients now, which I was nervous when I first started it. But when I tell my clients, like, listen, unless it's like if something needs to happen, I will absolutely, like, I'm on top of it. I will get back to you. I will let you know what's going on. But if you send me an email at 8 o'clock at night that can be responded to in the morning, you'll probably hear from me the next morning. Just because, you know, if you don't set those boundaries or those expectations, it leads to burnout, which would make me a worse agent for my clients. And so once I wrap my head around that, like taking care of myself and having family time actually makes me a better agent. And my clients have all, you know, nobody gets mad if I don't respond to them at 9 o'clock at night, just because typically it's not something that needs to be hashed out outside of business hours. So,
well, and I think you teach people how to work with you, right? So like if you set those expectations, like, listen, this is like how I work, and this is
when it's not emotional.
Yes,
Yeah,
like
I think that's really powerful.
Then people like get it, and it's fine. But also like you have to recognize that like when you set those expectations, then you also have to be thoughtful about like when you respond to them, because if you you know, if you're responding immediately to every single thing, they're going to assume and make assumptions that that's how you're going to work with them. And I think you have to be really thoughtful and intentional about what expectations you set and like what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I consider myself lucky because I feel like most of my clients are just very like rational, good, easygoing people. So I don't really have that many issues, but you know, just having those conversations, like when I first hired a team member, an agent to help me with showings, I was very nervous about that. And then I had a conversation like, the truth is like my value to my clients is not opening doors so that they can look at houses necessarily, right? Like my value is in the negotiations and the, the valuing of the home. And again, when I explained that I hired somebody because I'm busy and I never want my schedule to get in the way of you getting in to see something quickly, it's been nothing but positive. I mean, I'm lucky that I have great agents that work with me, who are also very good at their job and very capable, but it was a mental hurdle that I had to get over and to like be okay with some delegation and realize that other people can be good at things too, and like kind of let go of that. It has to be me all the time.
Well, I think
That's
it's
such a hard shift.
I think it's a testament when you were saying that most of your clients are pretty like even keeled and like cool. I also, just as someone who's had to like manage lots of people in my life, I think it's also like a testament to your leadership with them and how you probably work with them, because I think people do match other people's energy. And so if you as an agent are like, riled up and fired up and anxious and worried, like your clients are going to match that energy.
Yeah. I never really thought about that, but that's very true. And I'm sure that you guys have dealt with agents who are like that. I got a call, I closed a deal and I got a call from like the office manager, and she was like, "Hey, I was talking with this agent and she just said how great it was to work with you. And so I just wanted to call and say thank you." Right. And as agents, like our job is not to get emotional about things. Like we're fiduciaries for our clients. We're doing what's best for them. But if somebody brings me an offer that's low, my reaction isn't going to be like, "Oh, go pound sand." Like, we're trying to do what's best for our clients, and this might not make sense, but there's no reason to like get upset or be rude to somebody on the other end, because they're just trying to do what's best for them and their clients.
Well, it's already such an emotional experience to buy or sell real estate. I mean, like, and I think just by nature, our clients, their emotions are high. And I think that we'd be doing them a disservice if we got caught up in that emotion or if we fueled that fire. So yeah, I always think of it as like the eye of the hurricane. There's all this stuff that is going on around us, but like, if I can be that calm piece, then I feel like I'm doing my best job for clients. And it's good when your personality kind of leans toward that way anyway. But I think that's a really good lesson to just kind of bring up for. We have a lot of real estate agents that listen to this and loan officers as well, just the eye of the hurricane, just being calm with all the other parties being chaotic, let's be calm so that we can
have to be
keep it on track.
That safe space, because there's always going to be hurdles, right? Like there's always going to be things that come up. And for our clients, that's the first time that they've dealt with that possibly. Right. But for us, because we do this on a daily basis, like we can be that calm, kind of soothing perspective and say like, I know that this seems super overwhelming, but these are a couple options on how to get past this. Because it's, and then you've got family members and friends chiming in on what they should do. That's always my favorite. Like, well, my dad was a realtor back in 1950 and he has some thoughts on your contract. Like, well,
in Florida.
His contract was 2 pages long. It's evolved a little bit, but they just have so many people trying to kind of, speak into what they're doing, that if you're not that calm, assured presence for them and knowing that you're doing what's best for them, then it can get chaotic pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's good advice.
What is one thing like you're most proud of in your career? Something that like when you look back just gives you like a lot of or a sense of pride around what you accomplished?
Right. I tell this story occasionally, but I've got some clients who I helped buy their first home, and they called me 2 or 3 years later and said, "Hey, we want a new home, and so we think we're going to sell this one and go buy another one." And the market had done well for them, and so I kind of shot myself in the foot, short term, and said, "Let's see if we can make the numbers work for you to keep this as a rental, and then figure out a way to buy it." And so they did. And, then they called me another 3 or 4 years later and they said, "Hey, like it's been great. But our kid has this opportunity to go to their dream college. And so we're thinking of liquidating our rental property so we can pay for that. And so we did that. And, it's kind of cliche to say like changing lives. But I gave them an avenue to go down that allowed them to like, support their kid in the best way that they knew how, and allowed their kid to go and like fulfill their dream. So that was a pretty cool.
I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah. It's such a good feeling too, to be able to help someone with such an important part of their life too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mike, do you set production goals? Like, you're a goal setter for the year? Do you have like a certain amount of like families that you want to help?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But I guess I don't know. I try to set those to be realistic. Over the last couple of years, it's been a challenge for me because I'm kind of weighing like the personal side of life, like family and then business, and trying to find that. So I'm not the guy who's like, okay, well, I sold 35 last year, I've got to do 40 this year, just because I believe that like the joy is in the journey, right? So I don't want to be out there like missing things for my kids. And so I do set goals, and I stick to those goals, but I'm not the guy to come to if it's like motivation to go be the #1 real estate agent, because I'm trying to. I listened to a podcast the other day where it was talking about like, let's redefine what success looks like, because we talk about these people come in and they built a company and they sold it for $100 million and that guy's successful. It's like, well, let's talk about like what his wife and kids think about him.
His life is in shambles. He weighs like 400 pounds and like doesn't sleep, right? Like that's
yeah. And so like, let's redefine the definition of success. Obviously we want to be successful in business, and I want to be able to provide for my family, but I also want my family to like me, and I want to go do fun stuff with them, right? So I do set goals, but I guess I would call them fairly realistic goals.
Yeah,
we talk a lot about that, because I think that you, especially in sales, like you can get caught up in that. And you do give something up when
well, you sacrifice. You're always sacrificing something, and I learned that earlier in my career, where it was all about the leaderboard. It was all about, it was kind of like a scoreboard. And it was like, I had kids probably around the same time that you did, 6 or 7 years into the business, and I started realizing like, okay, great, I had a great production year, but then January 1st, it's like, okay, it's the reset button. And now I got to do, what do I have to do this year to get up at the top of the leaderboard again? And then it's like, well, wait a sec. Like you mentioned, I could be #1 in production in my company, but what about being a dad? And what about being a husband? And what about these other things that are important to me? I think that's a great point, man. So it sounds like you're driven. Tell me this, like what drives you?
Right. I guess I still just get super excited about people wanting to, because, we talk about when people call me or you, really, right? It's because of, there's probably 4 or 5 categories, and they, it's like diapers, death, divorce. Now I'm blanking on the other one, but like we get called at milestones of people's lives. And so like I just closed on one. It was a client. She had gotten divorced. She was kind of looking to start a new chapter in her life. So we went and helped her buy a small condo. And I still get excited by that, just because when I can help my clients to whatever that next chapter of their lives is, to start that off in a good space, something that makes sense financially and is going to help them over time. Like, that's kind of what drives me. Obviously it's fun, having been in the business for a while, to see like I was talking about, like the impact that it can make when you educate and kind of coach your clients to do things that are going to help set them up for the life that they want.
I'm interested in knowing like who has been your biggest mentor, or not even necessarily like a human that you know in real life, but it could be, an author, or, someone with ideas around real estate or personal development. Like, is there anyone that kind of sticks out for you that's been really impactful, either in your work life or your personal life?
Right. I mean, on the professional side, like the like nuts and bolts of like doing real estate deals. There was a gal at my first brokerage that kind of took me under her wing. So she was very impactful, just teaching me like, because the truth is you graduate from real estate school and then you still have no idea what you're doing, right? Like you learned all this stuff that you never need to know, and they didn't teach you how to like go find a client. You can write a contract, but they don't teach you to write like a great contract. And so those kind of nuts and bolts. And then probably my dad, just in terms of, he was an entrepreneur as well. He ran his own business. And so I get together with him and just kind of talk about, because the older I get, the more I realize like he was going through the same stuff I've been going through. And so it's just been fun to kind of have his perspective about, life and, life overall and business and those kind of things, but just kind of keeping that balance. So he's probably, in terms of like a person, the number one. I mean, I could list off a dozen books that, impacted me in some way or another, but he's probably my go-to for like continued impact on just how I run my life.
Love that.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, you mentioned books too. Like, what are you a fan of? Like, you have a book recommendation that you would want to throw out there?
I do. It's not really a business book, but I tell people it's like the most, especially having kids, the most impactful book I've read in the last like 5 years. And it's called The Coddling of the American Mind.
Ooh, okay.
I love this already.
So, and then, yeah, I mean, that one is really, really good. I'm reading another one right now called The Gift of Influence that I'm really enjoying as well. But yeah, The Coddling of the American Mind just kind of talks about this crazy society with all the technology and how we need to be cognizant of what that's doing to us and our kids and everything. So it's worth a listen for sure.
That's deep, man. All right, I'm going to get into that. All right. I know we touched on the market a little bit and talked about, the fear of the impending quote unquote crash. What are you seeing like over the next few months? We're in 2023. Any advice, for buyers, sellers out there on what the next few months are going to look like here in real estate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most agents that I talk to, and me personally, I've felt since the first of the year an uptick in activity. Have been seeing more multiple offer situations, and I think that that's kind of a culmination of a lot of things. But people are having to get more realistic about their list price, right? Because they have to understand that interest rates aren't at 3% anymore, so you can't expect to get 50 to those days are gone. So people are getting, I think, a little bit more realistic with what their homes are worth, and that's driving the competition. And then I think that buyers are kind of just, for a while there it was like, well, maybe we'll go back down to 3% this year. And now they're realizing, we're still right around the historical average for mortgage rates, right? Yeah. And for renters, a lot of the time, even with increased payments because of the higher interest rate, it's still cheaper to buy a house if you have a down payment than to rent, certain short term and then certainly long term. And so I think that as we move into the spring, we're going to see more and more activity. And I think that this summer is going to be kind of bonkers, because I think that we have a lot of people who, I have a lot of clients who are waiting and they're going to make a change in the summer. And I don't think the inventory is going to continue to climb very much, because now we have this new dynamic of people who want to move for whatever reason, but they don't want to give up their 3% interest rate. And so there's going to be those people who don't need to move, but they want to, and then they just stay put in their homes. And so inventory is going to continue to be tight. And I think that we're going to start, just seeing more competitive market. It's still technically a seller's market, but it's a lot easier for buyers to go in there and, expect repairs to be made based on inspection stuff and get some concessions and do it 2-1 buy down, whatever that looks like. So I think it's going to be a really good time to buy, but my advice would be to jump in sooner rather than later, because more and more people are figuring out that like this is where we're at and they still want to buy a home.
Yep. And I like how you mentioned before too, that we've been saying the term for the past few months: marry the house, date the interest rate, divorce the rent. When rates do eventually drop, you're going to want to be in a house so that you could take advantage of that on a refinance. As opposed to
and not have to be out there competing, right?
Exactly. Because that was brutal.
Yeah.
I think that was a really good explanation, and I agree with you wholeheartedly with your take on the market over the next few months. Are there any up and coming areas? I mean, I know there's not a whole lot of building that is being done in the metro area, but like any up and coming areas you would recommend to buyers?
Yeah, I mean, Red Rocks Ranch over kind of West Lakewood is going to be a cool development. That in terms of it, kind of like a new version of Green Gables, right? Like new homes, beautiful homes, cool neighborhood. I think that that's going to get a lot of traction just because it's a desirable area, and we're seeing more and more people. I mean, there's always been people moving here to Denver, right? Now it's just the people that are moving here are coming with good jobs who can afford to buy a house. And generally speaking, I'm sure some people would disagree, but they kind of want to be, for a lot of those people, they're coming here because of the outdoor lifestyle. And so those people are kind of trending towards the western suburbs. So I think that's a really good area. And then, most of my business is kind of Denver and then west over into the foothills. And so I think that there's some opportunities, there's some cool, redevelopments going on. And, even though it looks like there's not a lot of inventory, there's always things being built if that's what you're looking for. Like you want that new build feel, but some of them are just smaller pockets now.
Yeah.
That Red Rocks Ranch area is super cool. Do you know if they're putting like restaurants over there? I know they had talked about there was like zoning for it at one point, but I haven't really
I think it's in the long-term plan. I haven't heard any details about like what's actually going in there, because I think that most of those people are like the commercial retailers trend to be on the back end of the development because they want residents there before they don't want to plunk a restaurant down and have like 2 houses built. So
Well, and that's what we saw with Green Gables too, is they had like the plans of multiple restaurants there. And then, I mean, there are a couple there now, but I think there's also like a car wash, and like a bank and stuff.
Station.
So I mean, there will be some commercial stuff, but
Okay. Speaking of restaurants, I have one of the most important questions I'm going to ask you. So if you and Stafford are thinking of going to like a restaurant in Lakewood, like what would be like top 2 choices that you guys would go to?
Ooh, let's see.
It's Lakewood, not a ton.
Andrew and I need more options because
we've gone everywhere
go to
in
Fiddlesticks. Like Fiddlesticks is like our one go-to.
Right?
Cafe Giordano.
Cafe Giordano is great. Love that. Manning's is good. It's like our kids really like Manning's. If I'm taking her out for something fancy in Lakewood, maybe 240 Union. Our favorite steakhouse is actually in Denver, but have you guys been to Garden Grace?
No.
Oh, you got
okay.
They have a flight. I'll gear this towards Andrew, but it's 3 different 4-ounce fillets. That's like, like grass fed prime, and then the Wagyu one. So it's
speaking my language.
It's expensive, but it's very good.
Well, maybe you can take me out,
babe.
That sounds really good. West Rail has actually come around in Lakewood too, over by Manning's. I don't know if you've been there, but that West Rail Tap and Grill, I think it's called. They've got pretty decent food too.
Okay, I haven't been there for a little while, but
it's gotten better.
Taco Bell.
I don't know about all that, babe.
Okay, so last question, also interesting. If you had to write a book today about something, what would it be about?
I would probably write a book about studying Americans' aversion to liking soccer. Because I was like, I grew up that way. Like, like I had friends that played soccer, and it's like, oh, you're it's a pansy sport, whatever. And then I started playing like recreational indoor soccer with Steph when we started dating, and realized how terrible I was. And which made me
and you never played.
Like,
you never played before?
No, never played before. Okay. And so it made me realize how good those guys actually are. And now I absolutely love soccer. So I would study, study that. I saw this clip the other day. It's like, everybody in America says it's like too low scoring. And it's like, well, no, with football, you guys just like made up magical point systems. So instead of a game being like 21-14 and the score is actually 3-2, like you guys feel better because there's more points on the board, but a soccer match can be 3-2 as well.
That's
That's
so
a good
bad.
point.
God, I never thought of it that way.
From a cardio perspective, how much different is it than basketball? Is it harder? I mean, just from that, like running, I know, because it looks like, I've never played soccer, but it looks like you're just running the whole time.
Yeah, I think that like, especially, I think if I had to bet on any professional athletes, like just going and winning a race, like a 2-mile race, I'm betting on soccer players.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
for some of those guys, it's just constant. Like they run like 8 miles in the course of a game.
Dang.
That's
Which is nuts.
crazy.
I like
Very
that, man.
cool.
That's an interesting one.
So,
All right, we'll start
Well-
writing it, Mike.
right?
Yeah,
I know.
start
I don't know
writing
that
that
anybody
book.
would read it. Maybe you guys.
I mean,
I'm
I
interested.
would.
Well, where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, my website is mikeolson.realtor, and my Instagram is Mike Olson Realtor. So pretty easy to find. But yeah, even if you're another agent who's newer in the business and just wants to sit down for coffee, people did that for me when I was newer, and I always love doing that just because I want to know other good agents and help pour into them as they're building their businesses.
Love it.
That's awesome, dude. Well, thank you for being a guest on the Headed Home podcast. All of our listeners out there, thank you very much for listening. If you like this episode, if you got some value from it, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. Please subscribe as well. We really appreciate your support. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, guys.